The Farragut Museum presents oral history interviews with Helen Trent, member of Concord A.M.E. Zion Church, and Hughie Moulden, member of Concord Original Church of God. They will take you back in time, describing their lives in the Concord community.
I was born in Knoxville at the old General Hospital. I've been on Bluegrass 76 years, same spot. I just moved from that house and built my house on the same plot. The first house burnt down when I was 3 years old.
I was born in Knoxville, and then we lived in, my parents and I lived in on Ebenezer Road, and then we moved to Cedar Bluff, and from Cedar Bluff down here in the Concord Farragut community. Daddy bought property there on Kenton Hall Road. He was there till he deceased, and it was 7 of us lived there till we passed on, and I'm the last one now out of the 7 that was to live. I was the 3rd in the family.
It was a gravel road. We had warm morning heaters. Very little action going on at that time. We were, when I was a boy living on Bluegrass, we were bused from Bluegrass to Concord. And the man that drove us, he lived over here on where these houses are built. His name was Lyman Bacon, Sr.
We went to grammar school. Just above the pavilion there was a little 2-room grammar school. At that time, of course, if you know, it was segregation. Should have been going to Farragut, but we had to go to Knoxville, Austin School. Lyman Bacon Sr. was the bus driver. So he drove us, he'd pick us up, we had to get up early in the morning. And then he would take us, he didn't take us all the way to Knoxville, he'd take us to Lions View. We caught the streetcar and went on into Austin High School. So it was a length of time. We had to get up early, and we got back home, we had to do the same thing, so it was about dark when we got back home. So we did that, and I was blessed, went on to there, and then later on in life, I got to going with taking care of a child while the parents worked, and then I stayed with them on the place with them, so I was close to the catch a streetcar on in.
Right where you came up to the church, there was that's where the primary school was. And when I graduated there, we were bused past Farragut, Bearden, to go to Austin. We went to Vine Junior first, and then from there to Austin High School. Had to leave home before day. Back then, we had many stops to make. We went to what they call Happy Home, that's off of Millbrook Pike. Then they went to Bearden, and then on to school.
Later on, I went to nursing school. At that time, it was segregated too, so should have been going to UT, but they had to divide it up, so we went to Knoxville College, some of the class. Some went to Maynard, they let us have classes in there, and some went to Old Knoxville General Hospital. So I went there, and we worked in the hospital about 4 months, worked in the classroom about 4 months, and then we were divided up and sent out to Fort Sanders, Knoxville General Hospital. And of course, at that time, UT wasn't open then. So we went there and worked in there, and then graduated from there.
And I wished I'd learned more about the Constitution than I did. Well, it wasn't too much about that I could do anything about it at the time. Now my boys, I have 4 boys, they went to Bluegrass School after segregation. And then they ended up at Farragut High School. Then they went off to college.
Like I said, a little 2-room school, teachers, 2 teachers was in the school, and then my sister and another friend did the cooking there in the school. And so we just, done well to been in a segregated time where we couldn't go where we should have gone. I should have been going to Farragut. And then later on, while in the family, the others come on behind me. Some of them graduated from Farragut. But it was the nephews and nieces, wasn't siblings. I guess we probably stayed in the lane. We knew how people were. And we just kind of stayed, where we was, because otherwise, like now, we wouldn't tolerate some of what's going on now. When, say for instance, like going to school, these parents, this day and time, which is good, it's a blessing, God moves in time. They wouldn't send their children to Austin or some of the other schools when they should be going to Farragut. So they didn't have any problem. They just went on and tended their business. They were spiritual-minded people, directed by God's leading, so they didn't seem to have any problem with whoever we worked for at the time. So we got along with people. I never had no problem with them, with any other race, the whites.
As a kid, we played with tires off of cars. We rolled them, whatnot. We had very few toys, at least I didn't. My siblings did. But there was plenty. I was an outdoors person. My grandmother raised me since I was 3 weeks old. I had siblings, but they eventually moved away and left me with my grandparents. So I had to make up my own little games.
Well, back in that time, we had to go to Knoxville, because when I was down in here and growing up, most of this was farmland, just horses, cows, and all up above on the other side of the street there was just horses and cows and chickens, and people was farming. So we had to go to Knoxville to get clothes, and at the time we didn't buy them. My parents was strict on what we wore on Sundays. We saved those, and we'd come in the afternoon out of school. We took off the clothes, and so. But we had to go to Knoxville. It wasn't, department stores and all went in this area. Then after a while, Westtown, established down in West Knoxville, so we could go there. But for years we went all the way to Knoxville, Sears, Dillard's, and all places like that. Knox Dry Goods.
Our grocery stores were, we went to Cadwalker's, which was in Bearden, until my grandfather got where he was unable to go, got sick. But in Concord, we had 2 stores that we shopped at, which would be Benson, Hobbs, and then the Frank Russell out in Farragut.
I remember when Daddy had a horse and buggy and all of that. And then later on, Daddy got a car, but now we didn't want to allow to drive the car. So Daddy drove and got the groceries, and most of it was, like I said, farming, Mama canning and all of that. But we had a good life, a good, healthy life.
My grandfather had a car, And I didn't get a car until after I graduated high school. So it was my feet. I got a 1953 Chevrolet. That was my first car.
Now my family, frankly, was mainly around with white, the Sturkeys, R.L. Sturkeys. We grew up with them. There was a large family of them too. Back in the day, it seemed like people had large families. He had a furniture store down on Gay Street, and that's where my dad worked for him for a while. And Dad rather farmed, so he quit doing that and started farming, but he was bad with the Sturkeys for several years. And I have a picture of my dad and, you know, there when he was working in the store there. So, but we got along. We was just kind of reared around. Most of them was white, but we were around. Like when we went to Ebenezer, children, we played with them, and they had no problem.
This lady on the wall, that's my grandmother. She was my, you would say, surrogate mother. She took me in when I was 3 weeks old. She raised me. And she was an example for me. She had a saying was that if a task is once begun, be the labor great or small, do it well or not at all. It took me a long time to learn it, but I did. There comes a time in life when you feel that you, after I got married, that you know it all. But I left the nest and, like I say, built my house. And I sort of strayed away just a little bit. But I came back. I got a good upbringing.
People back at that time, they could correct other children, but not only theirs. They could speak to them and correct them if they saw it in the wrong. So my pastor, the Reverend Edward Miller, the one that I came into church under, he was pastoring in this area at the time. This is the third building. It's on the bulletin board out there, the pictures. He was like a father image to us too, our family. He had a large family, so we respected him highly. Very dedicated man.
It was a wooden frame building closer to the road. And they decided that they wanted a larger church, so they built this one. It's roughly, they say we've been here around 103 years in the neighborhood. Probably more than that. They've just lost some records.
I'm thankful, I'm blessed to say it. At 93 years old, we were reared up in that way. My father and mother were Christian folk, and we was at church on Sundays. At that time, they were having church morning, afternoon, and night services. So we were reared up in that way where we had to go. And I'm thankful now. I look back over life and I see what they were striving to do. And we just church-minded folk we are, and I'm very much pleased and happy with being here at this church. Had many different areas in the church that I filled in and worked in. I am a deaconess at this time, a class leader, and whatever that I can do, I'm willing and thankful that I am doing it. I know that I'm here for a reason, and I'm not here by accident at this age. God's leaving me here for a reason, and it's not just for me, for Helen, it's to reach out, encourage and help others. And I hope and pray that I'll continue to do that.
Right now, where we sit is where I attend church. But I need to make a correction. This is not, it's a place where we meet. This is not the church. You and I are the church. And it's time that people recognize it. All of this, that's what segregation is about. We make a big issue out of it, but there's only one church, one God, one faith, one baptism. But this is where I attend service. But again, I'll say that it's not the church. These four walls are not the church. And it's time that the church takes, we are the church, that we take it outside the doors. The pastor now, her name is Ruby Winton. She's been with us almost 3 years.
When I got into this church, I was about 23 years old. My husband, Leroy Trent, was military. And when he was discharged, that's when we lived on down here. And then we went to Maryville Pike, but we moved back. We was in Maryville Pike about 50 years. He's deceased, he passed young. And then I moved down here, which I was thankful and blessed. I moved down here near family and the church family. So I've been down here now, and where I am now, about 6, 7 years, I guess.
My first job was working on the farm for two families. They were millionaires. It was off of Westland Drive. It belonged to the Sanfords and the Bonds. It was two families that lived on the same farm, 300 acres. At that time, when I first married, it probably was $35 a week. How do I answer that? We got by, didn't have no choice.
The UT hospital was established, but I went over there and helped them that closed Old Knoxville General, and I went over there to help get that situated. Worked in Central Supply, and then on the floor at the 3rd West. That time it was segregated, so the blacks was on 3rd West. I worked on there. I worked night duties there, and the instructor that I had in nursing was very, very good. I made good grades there. UT Hospital had me doing what I really wasn't qualified for at the time. Talked to the supervisor about it, and she thought I was real good, but I was giving pre-ops and preparing patients for surgery. And if it's an error, a mistake, I knew deep down I would be responsible. So after I talked to her, she tried to see if I wanted to work in surgery, but I had made up my mind, prayed about it, talked to my husband. He suggested I'd quit. I talked to him because I knew that we were just starting out good because he hadn't been too long, got back from military. I knew I had to work, I needed to work. But I stayed home for about a year. And that's when God had to be in the plan. I got on at the health department, and I retired from there.
And then I went to worked at Thaxton School for a period of time. Then I worked construction. Then I worked at Wise Ironworks. You ever heard of that? Off of Ebenezer. Then I went to work. I've always wanted to drive a tractor and trailer. So I went at Fleet Transport, then I got hired on at Exxon Company USA, 25 years.
Well, it was several of them. It was several that I know, the Millers and the Billingsleys, let's see, the Kyers, the Mouldens. It was quite a few families, Jeters, the Almonds, the Dunns, the Billingsleys, the Stones, the Claibornes. He had a little store down here on the corner. Yeah, the building is still sitting there now. So we went there quite a bit after school, and then we would go over in the old historical Concord area. We would go over there sometimes at lunchtime, and back at that time at lunchtime we could get bologna. We'd go there to get bologna. And Miss Prater, Elsie Prater, she was always, a lot of these people worked for her on her farm. And, yeah, there was quite a few families in this area. James Jeter was, she lived right down here. One of the Jeters is a member here at the church. Steve is a member here at this church. The good-sized family of them. Their house is empty, but it's still on the right as you go out Loop Road. They had a little store there. Like I said, it's still sitting there. And we used to go down there quite a bit, and they had little entertainment times. And Minnie Jeter was the mother, very dedicated little lady. She taught Sunday school quite a bit for the youth here. And of course, she's deceased now. But yeah, they were a nice family.
There were the Stones, Coxes, my family, Moldens, Archie, and Henry. Millers. There were about 6 of us.
Now, my sister, Pauline, married Lyman Bacon's senior. He married his son, Lyman Jr. And he was military also. Yes, I remember them real well because he was the bus driver for us. Lyman Bacon Sr. was. And then his son, Lyman, after a while, he drove some for us. So, very dedicated. He was a member of this church, junior was. Very dedicated with lay. Just very dedicated worker. So, yeah, we had some good working people, good family people. So I'm thankful and glad I can look back over it and see it and say that, and knowing it's the fact, which is the main thing. But yeah, we had just good family time.
And at that time, we had what they call the park on the 4th of July or the other holiday. That's where we all met up at.
We got with other families, you know. My pastor had a large family, Reverend Miller, and we would get with them, their children. And then at that time at the park downtown, I guess it's Chill High, it was just special day, well, on the 4th of July that they allowed the blacks to come. So we would get together and go to that. And then we just got together as a family and enjoyed each other there in the yard at home. And had picnics and stuff like that, and Mama did a lot of cooking. Of course, she had to cook with a large family, so we enjoyed that. And the Christmas and holidays, Thanksgiving, and we had church services definitely on Thanksgiving and Easter and all that. We recognize those days a spiritual manner. I'm thankful for life. I'm thankful for what everybody's done for me and doing for me and for my family and for this community, Farragut community. I'm glad to be back in it after all these years that I've been out.